In the last video I was talking about space, again drawing from the Mark Johnson quotation, and what I was trying to begin to introduce with that was this idea that that our understanding of space, whilst it's often informed by education, by science, by interpersonal agreements about what space is, and that's something I want to go on to, our primary understanding of space is phenomenological. It's drawn from the direct evidence of the senses, if you like. And what I wanted to do in this video is just spend a couple of minutes just articulating some of the what I hope are really obvious aspects of what phenomenal space is like, and just kind of what it's like to be alive and awake in the world, and to apparently be surrounded by this thing called space. I just want to again just put a precursor on that by indicating that when I'm talking about space, I'm not talking about it separate from those other aspects of experience that I've already mentioned, specifically objects and perceptions. Clearly, objects and space are related concepts. You can't have an object without that object occupying space, so it is composed within space. And you can't have space without a perception of space, without the kind of sensory motor perceptual capacities that we have to allow us to infer this thing called space and to interpret the laws of the universe, if you like, as being spatially extended. So, as I say, although I'm focusing on space, I am aware that these other orientations are at work in that. So, some of the things that I think are absolutely characteristic of phenomenal space, and which I'll be referring to later on, really emerge out of what it's like to be in to be this kind of a body on this kind of a planet, in this kind of an environment, and with these particular sensory motor systems in operation. So, for example, our understanding of space is completely caught up with the logics of perspectivalism, for example. I'm looking out at this webcam, as I think I mentioned in my last video. The webcam seems to me to be about this big. I know it's really bigger, but the way that optics work, the way that this thing called optics work, and my understanding of that, my internalization of those optics, require me to perceive it as actually, to see it, I should say, not perceive, to see it as smaller than it is. And so objects in the distance regularly appear smaller than objects close up. It's an inherent aspect of phenomenal space. I'm also aware of the fact that that space is, although it's a three-dimensional space I'm walking around in, I kind of know that there are other dimensions, but phenomenal space is kind of three-dimensional. Those dimensions aren't created equal. The fact that I live and was born and have spent my whole life, and my whole species has spent its whole life on a planet with gravity, demands that that this space is organized, and it's organized so that this particular movement in space, this what I think of as a vertical dimension, is special. It's not the same as the horizontal dimension. The vertical dimension has a particular set of characteristics which are very different to horizontality. Verticality is the direction in which things fall. It's the direction in which my body orients itself to when I'm standing upright and not falling. It's the direction which is at 90 degrees to the plane on which I appear to be standing. So the dimensions of this phenomenal space which I occupy, height, width, and depth, are not the same. This dimension, the up-down dimension, the vertical dimension, has a number of characteristics. One of which is this this one produced by gravity, which is to do with falling and rising. The horizontal dimension of distance away from me has this odd property of causing things to diminish in size, And that's not a characteristic of the horizontal dimension, which stretches things out in front of me. It's a very different kind of experience. So that's just another example of this phenomenal space that I'm talking about, which of course is nothing like Cartesian or Newtonian space, and certainly has nothing to do with Einsteinian space or any of the more exotic spaces that you find in descriptions of certain kinds of physics. Experiential space has those kinds of qualities. It is perspectival, it's viewpointed, it has a horizon, and I think the horizon is a very important aspect of lived experience. My vision is always terminates, usually at a horizontal line, but at some kind of point. And there are a number of particular characteristics which map onto that termination, to do with distance, to do with blurring, to do with diminishing in size. This associated with the horizon, associated with distance, the fact that I also have two eyes is significant. Two eyes give me depth perception, amongst other things. So the dimension of space which seems to lead from me and leads out into the distance has again unique characteristics, unique properties, which emerge from the fact that I can detect depth perception, and I can focus at different points outward from my body toward that horizon, or even further beyond the horizon if I'm looking in certain directions. So again, that's a very, very organized, structured set of relationships which are unique to phenomenal space. Those kind of features to do with horizons, to do with focal points of depth perception, to do with the determination of the vertical dimension as a line through which gravity operates. Those kinds of properties don't really feature within the objective spaces of physics and the objective spaces of kind of abstractions. They are unique properties of phenomenal space. I think that's pretty much all I want to say on that right now, because I want to a little bit later on to use some of the properties in space as hooks to hang other ideas on, to hang some more poetic understandings on. But basically all I'm saying here is the evidence of the senses, which after all is pretty much all we've had for most of our existence as living creatures. The evidence of our senses produces a certain kind of space which is highly organized, highly idiosyncratic, and highly oriented around the notion of the subjective space. And what I want to go on to say in some later videos is that organization of subjective space provides some of the templates for particular organizations of meaning and thought. Okay, what I want to talk about next, actually, related to that, is that this phenomenal space in which we appear to live, the evidence of the unique evidence of individual senses, isn't the only space that's available for this kind of poetic mapping and for turning into meaning and thought. There are other spaces as well, but I do think this phenomenal space of individual human being has a particular significance. Okay, thanks very much.